Good afternoon. Hope everyone is doing well today, staying safe, healthy, and supported in our current moment. This is our first virtual grassroots idea exchange, and we're very excited to make this happen. And today's focus is really talking about beyond the current moment. So how do we support greater collaboration and co-working across our grassroots community? And for those of you who don't know, I'm Kristen Feierabend. I work with Wake County Cooperative Extension as part of our Social and Economic Vitality team. And Social and Economic Vitality is led in partnership between Cooperative Extension and Wake County Human Services. And so on the call with us today, we have Verna Best momentarily. She is here to listen in, but will likely have to leave. But we also have Amanda Salami, our new program assistant with Social and Economic Vitality, Dynasty Winters, our Vista with Social and Economic Vitality, Southeast Raleigh, and I think Ani Krajilian, our other Vista with Social and Economic Vitality working in the Eastern region. So we've got a whole team of folks here to support us on the call today. And then a little bit later, we'll introduce Rob Shields with ReCity Network, who's going to share some about his work in Durham. So just a little bit of background on Social and Economic Vitality, since I think some folks may be new to this work. It's a collaborative, multi-tiered initiative to eliminate intergenerational poverty in Southeast Raleigh and Eastern Wake County, so meaning Knightdale, Wendell, Zebulon area. And the bulk of our work is really focused on supporting families, nonprofits, small businesses and entrepreneurs, and communities as a whole. So we have a whole lot of different work across each of those areas. Today it's really focused on our nonprofit and small business work. And you can see some of our values listed on the left for those who can see the screen. Some of those are lifting up authentic community voice, facilitating reciprocal relationships, so not just one-way extractive relationships, but really two-way mutually beneficial relationships. And then diversity, equity, and inclusion, with racial equity being really at the center of our work. So if you want to learn more about our work, we're available to talk about it at any point. Verna, myself, or any of our other team members. Amanda, I think, can share a link if you want to sign up for our newsletter if you're not already, as well as our Facebook page. So for today's session, our agenda, I'm going to share a little bit about how you'll be able to participate, why we're having this conversation, why in this particular moment, and then Rob will jump in to share some about the ReCity Network, and hopefully that'll spur some greater conversation about what we're doing here in Raleigh and Wake in terms of grassroots collaboration and opportunities for beyond this current crisis. And at the end, we do have a raffle. Yay. All right, so for participating in this session, as I mentioned, the folks' audio is currently muted. If you want to comment, you can click the raise hand button and we can unmute you so that you can ask a question or share a comment. You can also type into the chat box. And if you're on the phone, again, to unmute, you just need to hit *6 and that'll unmute you. And then you can just kind of interject, let us know you have a question, and then we can pause to take that. Session is being recorded so that folks can watch later. And for those who have participated in video conferences recently, you've probably heard that there's a lot of interruptions taking place with strangers coming in with inappropriate content, etc. We hope that doesn't happen, but if we need to, we can always help people leave if need be. So why are we having this particular conversation around collaboration and co-working? As I mentioned, Social and Economic Vitality, one of our key focus areas is nonprofits, supporting our grassroots nonprofits in particular. And in 2019, we held with partners, we held a grassroots nonprofit leadership institute where it was a multi-week program, and the folks in that program consistently expressed the need for greater collaboration and resource sharing in the community. And then when we pulled that group together again in January 2020 to ask them what would be helpful moving forward, how we could continue to support their work, we heard that expressed again, that we want to see more collaboration and more resource sharing. So just coincidentally, serendipitously, we were introduced to Rob at ReCity toward the end of 2019, and we thought, this is a really great moment, great opportunity to really learn from what ReCity has been doing and build on what they've learned. We all can learn from failure as well as success, so hopefully we'll hear a little bit of that from Rob. But this is really just a start to a conversation that we hope can continue beyond this moment. And then I just wanted to provide a little bit of framing for why are we having this conversation right now, amidst a pandemic, amidst a major crisis. It seems a little bit hard to think beyond this moment. But in reading this, an article that was published recently by Jade Begay, who's a member of the Pueblo community in New Mexico, I felt that she really captured the importance of why we need to be thinking about short-term and long-term simultaneously. So since there are some folks on the phone, I am going to take a moment to just read these short bits out loud. So when we are able to quiet all the worries, the media, and public frenzy of this time and think about the big picture, we can see that this moment is an opportunity to come together in community, in care, and preparation. By the time the pandemic has been managed, we will have learned so much from this moment and how we can better prepare for these types of scenarios. We will see where we have gaps in our communities, cities, nations, and where we have strengths. We cannot go back to business as usual after this experience. We have to apply what we learned to our lives, to our politics, and to our relationships, so that if and when this happens again, whether it's a pandemic or a climate catastrophe or otherwise, we can be fully prepared as communities. So I just wanted to share that as kind of framing, grounding for today's conversation about how important it is that we not only provide kind of crisis response, crisis management, but that we really pull together in this moment to think beyond the crisis and how we want to be as a community as we emerge out of this and over the long term. So want to do a quick poll of the group just to get a sense of who is on the call. So hopefully for those of you who are on the computer, a poll has come up and it's asking what your affiliation is, if any, if you're a community member, a nonprofit, a business, faith organization, government employee, college or university employee, or other. We'll give a couple minutes or a couple more seconds for that. Folks on the phone, I'll share the results with you when they're done. Just another second. All right, so it looks like we have a nice mix of folks on the phone. A community member, about a third of the group were nonprofit affiliated, a couple businesses, faith organization, several government employees, and some folks who identify another way. With that, I want to introduce Rob Shields, who works with ReCity Network in Durham. Again, we got to meet him recently, and we're just so appreciative of the wisdom and insights he has from his experience in Durham, and are excited to share in conversation with him today.
Wonderful.
And
Thank
Rob,
you for having me.
Yep.
Krista, can you hear me okay? I assume that you could speak on everybody's behalf if you're If you're good, hopefully everyone else is good as well. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to enter into this conversation with you all. I'm going to put out a huge disclaimer here before we get into this. My hope and goal is for this first part of explaining what ReCity is to be really the bulk of my time. It'll go as quickly as possible to get to where I think really the deep wells of knowledge are and wisdom, and that is with you, the participant. That is really the value and spirit of ReCity. Is we believe that there's so much to be gained by coming together and really drawing from each other's experiences, knowledge and wisdom, and differences of perspective. And so I think if anything, was very excited for Kristen and Verna to invite me in to really help moderate a facilitated discussion with you. So I hope that you will be able to get to a place where you'd be able to unmute and contribute to the conversation. My job is just to help set up framework of a little bit about my background, who I am and what ReCity is. For those of you who were able to watch our video, I think that does a really good job of kind of taking you from no knowledge to 0 to 60 very fast. But I'm going to do a quick walkthrough for those of you who have not had a chance to watch that video and have never had the opportunity to visit ReCity in Durham, just to help give you context for the rest of our conversation. So Kristen, you can feel free to kind of hover over maybe that first page that hits the vision and mission statement. I think it might be past that awkward picture of that guy looking sideways. There we go. There we go, right here. Mission, vision, and values. Feel free to just skim over these, as well as kind of see a little bit of a testimonial from one of our partners. But in a nutshell, these really encapsulate ReCity Network and why we exist. We exist really to see this vision of a future of where each of our communities are thriving for everybody. In order to do that, we know that they need to be rooted in justice. And so the way in which we do that, our mission, is to come alongside organizations, nonprofits, businesses, and faith communities that are social impact focused in nature in some way, shape, or form. They care about being rooted in their community. Their business, their church, their nonprofit couldn't happen on the moon. It matters that they happen in Durham. It matters that your organization serves Raleigh, or maybe specifically a subset of Raleigh, like Southeast Raleigh. So we come alongside these leaders to form a relational network, and our job, ReCity's team, exists to build their capacity. It's really that simple, to build capacity by helping them to be stronger as organizations, but then also for us to have stronger collective impact, which I know is a buzzword that can be overused at times, but what it's simple. I mean, the root of it is still true. We know that we can have greater impact together than we can alone. And so we use our model in order to do that. And you can see our values here, but how that functions day to day is in 3 verticals or 3 buckets. Primarily, it is shared space, shared services, and advocacy. So this is probably a good time to insert a joke about it's a bad time to be in the business of co-working and building intentional shared space under quarantine. Am I right? You guys are all on mute, so I'm gonna pretend like you all said a collective amen to that, because feedback, I feed on it. It's really nice. So I'm gonna assume that all of my jokes are landing really well right now, and that you're chuckling alongside of us as you're listening. But I think those are the 3 verticals that we have shaped our space around. And so shared space, again, is one of them, which is especially challenging. And we're going to talk about ways here in a second that we've pivoted to adapt to this new normal that we find ourselves in. But Kristen, if you want to scroll down to get to a little bit of who our network is and what they look like, I'll unpack this as we go. So you can pause there and see that we have a co-working space, right? This is part of the topic of this conversation. It does exist in a physical place in Durham, but really we all along have seen the real ethos of who we are as a relational network. And so this gives you a little bit of snapshot of who is in our network. We've got 41 organizations who are a part of our ecosystem, comprised of just over 100. I think that number is closer to 120 community leaders now, all serving in some way, shape, or form Durham. And so when we talk about building capacity, we use survey data to ask our partners, how are we doing? And so we ask very specific questions like, are we creating value? Are we helping you create value for you as our constituents? And we see 80% say yes. 8 out of 10 people, 82% say ReCity partners think that partner organizations in the network are adding value to each other's work, which really speaks to the collaboration and the shared impact that I talked about earlier. And then roughly 3/4 of our partners answered that they believe ReCity, being a part of ReCity, has increased their organization's capacity to achieve its mission. And so you can see those second and third stats really speak to collective impact and individual impact, and the importance of measuring both, right? They're stronger as organizations, and they're able to do more independently, but also they're able to strengthen their community partnerships because of being a part of this relational network and accessing a physical space, a lot like our co-working space. And you can go to that next slide to do a little bit more of a demographic snapshot of who we are as a network. I mentioned that we're a blend of 3 target audiences: nonprofit, business, and faith, which ironically it's fairly well represented on this call. We have almost very similar statistics who are listening in right now. So about 60% of our network are made up of nonprofit leaders. About a third are businesses, and just over 10% represent some type of faith community. And then demographically speaking, from day one, when we started ReCity 3 years ago, our vision was to reflect and really tap into the rich diversity of assets in our community, of the people, right? We want to reflect the diversity of the city in which we serve. And so our job from day one was to identify who are the leaders that reflect the community, that are tapped in, that are proximate to issues affecting the community. And in Durham, a city as rich in diversity as Durham, that meant identifying leaders of color, female leadership that we can come alongside to say, hey, how are you proximate to the issues of your community, and how can we help build your capacity? Because you're the ones that are the change agents. We just want to come alongside you and strengthen you so that you can better achieve your mission. And so to date, our statistics roughly are actually pretty closely reflect the diversity of Durham, with 54% of our network organizations being led by a person of color and 42% being led by women. And I think this last slide is just a little helpful tidbit of just showing just the relational focus that we put on our network. This is meant to be, this is something we include in our annual report. And if you're watching on video, you can see this, but kind of just some accolades and superlatives of, we believe very firmly at ReCity that organizations don't partner together. It's the people that lead the organizations that really make partnership happen. And so in order to do that, it's not just putting each other's logos on each other's websites. It is getting to know each other as people and really developing relationships of trust. And so in order to do that, we need to know more about each other than our elevator pitches and what service you provide the community. We need to know you as a person. We need to know aspects about you personally, not just professionally, if we're really going to enter into robust, meaningful partnership with you. So I think that gets me to hopefully that helps bring you up to speed a little bit. As Kristen, you can continue to scan through the rest of the annual report. If this is available on our website, if you want to skim through this and read through some of these stories of impact that we've had in our first 3 years. But I just want to spend just a few more minutes before we open this up to discussion, just talking about how we've adapted our model during this crisis and this pandemic that we find ourselves in. ReCity's space is all but shut down. We are considered an essential service based on some of the nonprofit work that happens out of our space. But we went from averaging about 100 to 200 people in and out of our space every day down to maybe half a dozen on a good day here right now. So we are all but shut down. Only essential workers are accessing our space as needed basis, but essentially our physical space is on hiatus. So for us, the question that we have begun to ask ourselves is, what does it look like how do we continue to build capacity to come alongside of our partners in a time where we can't offer our first bucket, which is shared space, which we've put such a huge emphasis in. We've invested so many resources to purchase and rent and furnish, right? And provide to our partners. What does that look like to lean more into buckets 2 and 3 of offering shared services to be able to stay relevant? But really, that feels more like a selfish way to ask that. I think the way our mentality is, how can we continue to serve? How do we leverage our time and our talent and our energy to come alongside leaders who are still working on the front lines because they need help and they can't do it alone? So how do we continue to create proximity for them with other people when we can't use physical space to do that? And so one of the things that we have done is really lean into taking all of our programming virtual. So just like we're on a call now, we have previously we hosted monthly town hall gatherings where we would provide lunch for our entire network. And that was about the pace that felt sustainable in the busy lives that we can all remember having not too long ago. So we have now shifted those into weekly Zoom calls where we're checking in with our partners, because as a principal, we're just seeing that over communication is really important right now in these isolating times. And so we carve out 30 minutes every Thursday afternoon to open up a Zoom call for whoever wants to check in and just share how they're doing. And we find that to be a really valued time based on the survey data that we're collecting from our partners. We also have taken kind of the lunch and learn model that we would use our space to do and just taken that online as well in the form of what we call ReCity coffee breaks, where we are tapping into the collective wisdom of our network to ask our ReCity partners to facilitate discussions around topics that they have expertise in. So that could range anywhere from fundraising to marketing, to budgeting and strategic planning, to self-care. We've found a weekly rhythm in addition to our town halls where we're taking and making those available via Zoom as well. We're also launching and testing out a platform that we're going to be piloting next month called ReCity Connects, which is a way to essentially digitally smart match volunteers, almost the eHarmony of volunteer matching, if you will, where our partners, as a benefit of being a part of the network, are automatically enrolled into this program, and they get to ask questions. And instead of just lobbing that out over email or to some listserv where you're not really sure the credibility or whether that person has been vetted to be able to adequately answer your question, we are working on a system that essentially vets volunteers and smart matches them based on their skill set to help answer your questions. And so another way we're trying to come alongside of our network innovatively in this time, even though a lot of those connections would happen in proximity in our physical space, we know that there's still a lot of digital opportunity to take that online right now. So we're going to be piloting that here in the coming weeks. And then it also has given us a chance to lean into digital mediums like podcasting. So we launched the Just podcast, JUST, in January in partnership with WRAL. And so that can be, you can find more information about that on our website, recitynetwork.org. But that is a mechanism that we're really thankful that we started a couple of months back, because that is something that can continue. These days, you can record a podcast from home using your phone and a really, really inexpensive monthly subscription service to be able to give you a platform to communicate to your audience right now, even though you can't get physically proximate with large gatherings. And so we're trying to lean more into that as well. So I will say, I told Kristen I'd tell her a way that I failed, because I think that's going to be a question we ask of you here in a minute. But one way that we are failing forward is in experimenting. You know, not all these experiments have gone great. We rolled out these coffee breaks, and sometimes they're really well received, and we've got 25 people on a really dynamic call. But even this morning, we did a one that we thought would add a lot of value, and we had 2 people on there, which again was a win for them. But I think definitely was something that it didn't seem to be all that well received across the board. So I think I say it a little bit tongue in cheek, and that, yeah, it may have been a failure if you're just measuring number of people, but when you measure the appreciation, I think our partners feel of making these resources available to them, I think the win is in the invitation, and the win is knowing that we're trying things right now for them, and that they can kind of tell us whether or not we should continue with a certain subject or not. Because sometimes that definitely has been the case with issues like fundraising, where there is demand to say, let's keep this conversation going, which I think we'll lob that same question out to you today. So I think I'll pause there and open up the floor to questions. I think Kristen might have some questions that she wants to walk through more directly. So I'll turn the floor back over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. You did just what you said, a nice compact overview for folks to introduce them to ReCity. So I want to open it up if folks have questions for you, they can do so now. You can raise your hand. I think, is there a raise hand button on y'all's end? I don't know if there is or not. If not, you can just unmute yourself and jump in with a question. And if you're on the phone, to unmute yourself, you just hit *6 and you should be unmuted. And I will just start, Rob, with a question that I got over email for someone who wasn't going to be able to join until later. He was just asking how ReCity got started. What was the mechanism? Was it a top-down, bottom-up combination? If you want to give just a little snapshot.
Yeah, sure. I would say that the short answer to that, it definitely is a longer story, and I don't want to take up too much more time. But for those who are interested, we started with, it was really birthed out of a research study done by city leadership in Durham around an IBM Smarter Cities grant. I'm not sure how many people know about Durham winning that award to be eligible to receive consulting back in 2014. But essentially that report revealed extreme disconnection in the nonprofit sector. We know disconnection exists everywhere, but even within like the youth services space in Durham, they found that there were 4,000 disconnected youth between the ages of 16 and 24 who are not in school and not working. And although there were 4,000 young people that fit that demographic, the study also found there were 400 youth serving organizations trying to attempt to reconnect that population. And so just an overwhelmingly oversaturation of effort. And that effort was often very siloed and segmented, which kept collective impact from happening. And so really ReCity was created in response to the city. Really in that report, it outlined the idea of a shared space could really help to de-silo that effort. And while ReCity's main focus has more to do with those of you on the call who are tackling intergenerational poverty than it does any specific sector like youth or homelessness or mental health. We're trying to be a platform to bring all types of sectors together to be able to reduce redundancy like that report talked about. So what really breathed it into life was a local church that helped to saw that report, saw that was a need that no one was meeting. So it was kind of listening to the community and then seeded the funding to be able to do a couple years of research and development to start to begin to connect with grassroots leaders to ask the question or really to share our plans and to have them hone it and speak into it, because we didn't want to open a space and then start recruiting. So it was throwing this vision out 2 years before we had a building and asking the community to shape it with us.
Thanks. Is there someone on the phone who had a question? You're welcome to, yep.
Christian, this is Kathy. I have a question. I really like the effort that you guys did with the ReCity Connect, with the matching volunteers. With I like the way you said with the eHarmony guide of matching volunteers. What technical tool did you guys use to do that?
Great question. Yes. I'm so glad you asked that, because it's actually a Raleigh-based firm that has the existing software that anyone can utilize. And so to my knowledge, no nonprofit in the triangle, we're the first nonprofit in the triangle outside of like higher learning institutions. So like Duke University uses this platform and other colleges and secondary universities use it to smart match their alumni network. Mm-hmm. But we see a ton of potential in not being the last nonprofit to use this service. So it's actually called Protopia. I'll type the spelling of it into the chat box. Protopia, but you actually get to white label the software yourself if you purchase a monthly subscription to their service, and you get to then cater the software to meet your needs. So if anyone's interested in learning more about that service, while we're early in the stages of building that out, I can't give you many testimonials yet, but it does launch May 1st. And by the end of May, we'll have run a full month cycle with a lot more success stories. So if we continue this conversation, we're kind of throwing ourselves out there to be the guinea pigs, but feel free to reach out to the Protopia team if this seems like that would be a resource worth pursuing.
Definitely. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
There are other questions at this point for Rob.
Kristen, this is D. Cliff.
Hey, D. Cliff.
Hey, the question that I have is when they talk about shared service, how do they roll that out? Is it a part of a portfolio, or is it some database and the nonprofits would put in their service levels and then you would offer that up to other nonprofits? Is there like a subscription level to it, or just how is that put together?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that the simplest way to answer it is very people-centric versus, I think the danger of over-formalizing and over-procedurizing, that's not a word, that I'm just making it up. Essentially, if you don't have a living, breathing organism of a database, it becomes irrelevant the day after you create it. And so it really needs to be something that changes over time, because our network changes over time. Our partners, who our partners are, what their needs are. And so you really can't just create something for this quarter or this year even, because you're immediately going to have to work to replace it. And so for us, that has been an evolution of experimenting. When we had our physical space, it would be experimenting with asking our partners via survey what shared services they would most benefit from, and then tapping into the wealth of knowledge we had both within the network and resources that we had outside of the network to bring in expertise on those areas that would meet their felt needs. And so originally, when we had our space running, that would take the form of lunch and learns, but that is now taking the form of these coffee breaks. And that's kind of the one-off version of it. We're working right now on developing a suite of services, of shared services, where we have more formal ongoing support around issues like accounting, fundraising, leadership development, HR, IT. When you look at the top 5 pain points of an organization, oftentimes they may have different missions, but a lot of times they're going to be the same in how you structure and run a good, healthy organization. And so a lot of times our organizations are running into the same hurdles within the same categories. And so really trying to formalize identifying expertise in each of those areas, and then ReCity making those available under its umbrella to be as easily accessible as possible for as cheap as possible. So as much that can be available for free as part of ReCity membership, but then obviously working to subsidize access to shared services as partners may, I think the nature of our work is we believe that those who have are best positioned to solve a community's problems usually are not the huge organizations with the multi-million-dollar budgets, but it's those who are in the grassroots, on the ground, most proximate to an issue. But typically grassroots organizations have small budgets, and it's like what comes first, the chicken or the egg? How do I get access to all this stuff that I can't afford so that I can take my organization to the next level? ReCity tries to enter into that space and really reduce the barriers to entry so that you're actually able to get the services you need to grow and to be able to then be eligible for those big grants that a lot of times are not giving or asking too much of a grassroots organization that just does not have the resources to invest in the evaluation and the data that would be required to get the big bucks.
Thank you. Another question that I have is more of a logistic piece. SEV resides in Raleigh, and you guys reside in Durham. Would we need to establish a working space in Raleigh, but use the model from your organization? Is that the thinking that we have going forward, or our next step?
Yeah, so I will just respond briefly and then let Rob jump in. So this is, I think, an opportunity to explore that and whether it makes sense. I think both SEV and ReCity want to approach this from a place of, is there need, is there interest, is there desire to make something like this happen? And if so, in Raleigh, and if so, then how do we facilitate that happening, and what pieces would need to be in place for it to make sense for our community? So not necessarily just picking it up and plopping it down and saying, oh, it's going to work here, but really kind of exploring more what would be similar, what would be different, how would they connect, so that we can leverage both networks, because I think there's assets across the Raleigh and Durham area. But Rob, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is that ultimately that's a question for you as the community to decide. I believe that ReCity in its most pure form is a framework that the Raleigh community could use if the Raleigh community deems it valuable to implement, but that would need to be contextualized to your community, and it would need to be validated by the community, because ReCity really truly sees itself as a network, not a hierarchical pyramid of, myself as the executive director of ReCity doesn't mean I'm not in charge of our network, right? While we do allow people, we help screen and vet who comes into our ecosystem, we're very much come alongside agencies where we're really lifting up grassroots leaders in Durham as the hero of the story, and those they serve as the hero. And so for us, I think one of the interesting things of this call is to share what we're doing in Durham, what we're learning, but really the question of whether or not Raleigh could benefit is up to Raleigh. And that is up to you, the people on this call and others that you're co-laboring alongside of on the ground, to see if this model could add value to amplify your work. And if so, ReCity model doesn't work when you're thrusting into a community. We have to be invited in as a thought partner. And if we are invited in, we are happy to share our playbook and how to execute this, but it really has to be centered around a gathering of community leaders that say, we're going to validate this to our community. We're going to say Raleigh needs this, and we're going to invite ReCity in as thought partners on how to run this playbook and contextualize it, versus Rob's going to come in, or ReCity is going to come in and tell Raleigh what it needs and how to do this. That just doesn't work for our model.
Does that answer your question, Cliff?
It did, but of course, it gives me some let's move forward type of thing, and I don't want to be speaking for everyone on the call, but I'm really asking SEV to maybe put a group together, and I would say off of our leadership team to kind of take a look, a more detailed look at how we would approach this, and maybe put it forward to the community, because some of the things that they are doing, when I look at the teams, we are trying to do, and we've been struggling with it. But one of the things that we often talk about is how do we get the collaboration between the nonprofits out in Raleigh, and how do we get them more involved in service sharing. So that's kind of how I perceive this presentation. But of course, I used to be aggressive at one point in time, and hopefully I'll get back there, in saying, let's at least step out to take a look at how it would work in Raleigh.
Thanks, Cliff. I would like to hear from some other folks on the call, maybe how collaboration is working for you right now in Raleigh, like what's worked, and or how you see ReCity adding value in a way that could be helpful so that collaboration could be strengthened, like Cliff was just saying. And if you do want to speak, again, you can unmute yourself, and it would be great to hear your name. And if you have an organization, you could share that. And if you want to turn on your video, that would be even better. So the question is just, how are you all collaborating right now? What's working, and what maybe resonated from the ReCity model that could be helpful here in Raleigh?
Hi guys, my name is Ani Kerjilian. I am the Social and Economic Vitality Vista working in Eastern Wake County. And I want to say that getting partnerships, collaborating together is going to be difficult because one of the issues is transportation and just getting everyone to talk to each other. So one of the points that I find really interesting is actually that shared space aspect, like having them work together within the same space. So they actually kind of forces them to acknowledge, hey, you're an organization who's here in Wendell. I'm an organization here in Wendell or in Knightdale or Zebulon as well. So that kind of forces them to interact on a different level.
Thanks, Ani.
Yeah, we've definitely seen the value, and I think if you do get a chance to watch our video, you can find that on our homepage, but also Kristen sent it out. I think it just shares a couple examples of those type of connections that you get even accidentally, or just the ease of referrals. You know, there's something to be said for, in our system, where to refer someone across town to give them a bus pass to an organization you're not really sure even still exists, taking someone, an individual, 4 hours, right? These are still realities that are only amplified now of how difficult it is to access resources versus in a shared space where you have built up trust and you're walking someone down the hall to an organization where you know the leadership by first name. You've seen them do work in your office and you know how they care for people, and you're able to do a warm handoff to someone that you know is going to receive your client with dignity and take care of them well. That's hard to understate the value of something like that. And we see that happen every day in that shared space, which obviously we know is not possible now, both in Durham or Raleigh for the time being, but we won't be in this forever. There will be a time where we're able to come out of quarantine. And I think it's an interesting thought to plant a seed for the future of what could that look like when we are allowed to convene together again.
Rob, I'm sorry, this is Kathy again. Rob, I think you're absolutely right. At the Pathway Center here in Raleigh, we have kind of a co-working space as well. There are, it's a city-owned business. It's a city-owned facility. However, we have 3 community partners that are there with us working on youth development and youth employment. And it's always nice when we get a student in who may not be eligible for one program, that we can literally walk over to another organization and get that kid the services he or she needs. I really like your idea of the weekly Zoom calls with your partners. I think that's very important that we do, especially now that we're in kind of the long haul of the pandemic. And that's certainly something that I'm going to be implementing, because I really want to know, I know we all miss each other. you know, there are different needs that we all need that we may be able to help with that we won't know unless we're really talking with each other. Everything shut down so suddenly. I think everybody was kind of like in cold shock for the first couple of weeks, but now I think it's really important that we really reach out and get to know how each other are doing, and if there's any issues or situations that we can help collectively address. So that's one thing that I'm going to be taking from your model.
Yeah, I think that we're just trying to lean into relationships where the trust has already been built right now. And I think that's probably, hopefully what you're hearing now is not, you know, let's attempt something new and forming new partnerships. I think that right now, recruiting new donors is difficult. Recruiting new partnerships in quarantine is incredibly hard. I'm not sure now is the right timing to consider something new in that sense. Right. I think something like an exploratory committee that was mentioned earlier to kind of take our time to determine whether or not Raleigh believes that a model like this could add value is something that could be started right away. But I do think, to your point, leaning in with who you've already built those trust, now is the time to cash in on those trust deposits and really over communicate with who you already trust to weather this storm together. And there will be a time where you need to make new connections one day, but I don't believe that now is that day necessarily, but really focusing on who you already know, and with the trust already built, you can move together through this very nimbly, because you're not having to start that trust building process. You've already done it. And so I would draw on your own well, to your point, to leverage rhythms like a weekly town hall or whatever you end up calling it on Zoom, but really rallying with who's already, like you're doing right now, who's already a known entity. I've heard it said, if now's a terrible time to add people to your team. Like it's just not, if you can avoid it, you know, now is not a good time, just because of all the problems that open up when you try to add a new person to a dynamic like this.
Right. Very good advice. Thank you.
Are there others who have thoughts on what resonated or what's working in Raleigh right now that we could do more of or do better? I will note that one of the slides that I scrolled past from Rob earlier is their Unity Fellows program, which kind of mirrors what we did last year with the Grassroots Nonprofit Leadership Academy. So it's a small cohort of grassroots organizations going through a multi-week process to build their leadership skills and nonprofit capacity. And so I think we could, if we do a further conversation, kind of explore that as well, and what we can take away or learn from their program to strengthen ours here in Raleigh, and vice versa. What can the Unity Fellows learn from our experience? And in addition, ReCity is also partnered with Launch Durham. There's Launch Raleigh, Launch Nightville, maybe. There's a bunch of launch programs, so for entrepreneurs and small businesses. So that's another program that they have in their space. So businesses are learning those skills, connecting with other businesses so that they can use each other's services, as well as connecting to that broader nonprofit network. So I think, as Ani mentioned earlier, there's just a lot of opportunities for connection and collaboration.
Hi, Kristen. This is Kirsten. I'm at the Duke Cancer Institute in the Office of Health Equity. Thank you so much for the presentation and for sharing the vast network of grassroots organizations and how everyone is coming together to work together collectively to move the needle forward. I think that's really awesome. One of the things that we do in our organization, in our group in particular, and we have a handful of team members on the call as well, is we go out into the community and meet the community members where they are, to be that connection between the healthcare system and the community. And if there's a need for a community member to receive care, that in real time, that they are being connected to the healthcare system and the appointment is made. So it's not just we give you a phone number, but we're making sure that connection is made into the healthcare system. And so, and that being said, one of the things that I was kind of thinking about and was wondering if we could kind of discuss and chat about is how could our office partner together with this enormous and rich network that you all have so that we would be able to have that bi-directional relationship in communication. We have a few signature events that we have in our office where we are providing resources and services to the men in particular. It's called the Men's Health Screening, and that event is held every September. And the men are able to receive a wide range of services. In the past, it was kind of known as the prostate cancer screening event, but now it's definitely morphed into a lot more. So we're doing blood pressure counts, blood pressure checks right then and there in real time. And if someone is in a different level of crisis, we're able to get them the appropriate intervention needed on the spot, as well as follow-up appointments and things of that nature. Same thing with diabetes. We're doing A1C testing. If someone has a high level, we're able to address that in real time, in addition to the prostate cancer screenings that we're offering, the HIV and Hep C testing. So if we could kind of briefly discuss some of the ways that, you know, we could kind of work together and see what that would look like, that would be, I think, an awesome win-win. And if others on the team, if they could chime in as well with their thoughts, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I see some immediate opportunities for social and economic vitality to connect with you, because we do have various points where we're meeting with community members and different events and programs that we hold throughout the year where we could partner and work together so that you have that immediate connection, particularly our annual community day, which draws 300 to 500 to maybe more community members. So that would be a great opportunity to connect. But I will let Rob jump in to share any examples of how maybe partnerships like that have worked in Durham and how we might be able to do something similar.
Yeah, just to make sure I speak directly to what, could you maybe repeat the final version of your question, just so I make sure I answer it and not guess?
Thank you, Rob. I know it was a really multi-layered question there, but you know, at the end of the day, the one thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that we are addressing the healthcare needs of the community and making sure that we're making those appropriate referrals and getting the community members that need the care to the healthcare system. And if it's a patient that needs to come to Duke, of course, we would definitely do the navigation to Duke. If someone needs to have the referral and they're closer to Rex, or if they're closer to WakeMed, of course, we would make that appropriate referral, because at the end of the day, we want to do what's best for the patient, and also working with the local FQHCs as well. So we help to navigate patients regardless of insurance status. So we work with community members and patients that have insurance, but also with community members that are underinsured, that are not insured at all, as well as if they are undocumented. And we do have Spanish translation available for services in our office.
Yeah, so I guess I didn't hear the question though. I guess if there wasn't one, that's okay. If it was more of a comment. How can we
work together? Like, what can we do? What are some ways that we can kind of brainstorm as far as how we could kind of meet the community where they are and the organizations and the services that your members are serving, and pair them with our office and the services that we provide. So at the end of the day, we're able to ultimately make that connection to the healthcare system to make sure there's a gap in care.
Yeah, okay. I think so. Your question, and you're a Durham-based organization, is that correct? Or are you Raleigh-based?
Well, you know, that's the unique thing about us at Duke. While we have traditionally are known to be in Durham, we also have Duke Raleigh, and we have something which we call the catchment area. So we can technically work with patients anywhere, but we'd have to work with organizations. But we typically right now kind of focus in on a 2-hour radius around us. But we would be able to technically help someone within the state of North Carolina.
Yeah, so I think the short answer to that, just to save space for time would be probably best to continue that conversation offline due to the specific nature of your mission and geographical focus. I think that 100% there's an opportunity there if you're looking to develop deeper ties to Durham-based organizations. That's very much who our network is. And so if there's interest in you leaning into that, we're kind of the initial launch point, but like potentially joining our network or having whoever serves Durham be a part and be kind of that touch point within our network. It doesn't really work the other way where, we try to not be in the middle of connections, because that is unnecessarily slowing things down and creating unnecessary red tape. So really the mechanism would be, if you want to connect with referrals with our network, it would be a conversation on what it means to join the network.
So that's, I think, a great point for us to kind of connect offline. We are based in Durham. We're off of Irvin Road.
Sure, yeah, you'd be very much in the I think there could be a lot of benefit in continuing the conversation. And I think to the point that maybe applies to other people on the call, when it comes to tapping the collective knowledge, there's something to be said of like geographic limitations of Durham people need to connect with Durham people. But also we're realizing, like with the launching of ReCity Connects, that thought leadership doesn't have geographic boundaries, right? I mean, even this call is a great proof of that. Like hopefully the ideas that are being shared on this call can translate to Raleigh. Just because I'm based in Durham doesn't mean that there aren't values that you can apply to your context. And so how do we create that cross-pollination of thought leadership and idea sharing across down 40 from each other, even though there are going to be some limitations to how we can partner together geographically. And I think that to the idea of exploring a potential physical site in the future, one thing with the way we're rolling that out right now is by activating other shared spaces around the triangle to form an alliance of shared spaces where we know that our people need to connect with you guys in Raleigh and need to connect with funders in Raleigh, right? I mean, they're not, even though they may be serving a clientele specific to, let's say, Northeast Central Durham, they're going all over the triangle to talk about their work, to connect with partners, to, maybe even where they live is not where they work. And so we're trying to activate spaces all across the region and get them to be interconnected, so that, because we know that our people don't just spend all their time in one neighborhood. And so we already have 2 other spaces across the triangle that we are a part of a co-working alliance with, where there's shared value. There's an undercurrent set of shared values where our people can access their spaces at no additional cost to their membership with us, which kind of leads to this near extended network of opening up more connections around that are triangle wide than just who they can connect with in Durham.
Perfect. Sounds exciting. Thank you. And we can share our contact information
Please
in
do.
the chat box.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is great to think about. And I do think healthcare is essential. I know healthcare is essential. And as Rob mentioned, it's really convenient at ReCity when you have multiple partners working in the same space and being able to make that warm handoff. And again, when that shifts to virtual, you already have that relationship, so that phone call is much easier and much more likely to have a positive impact and result in an actual connection because you've been in that same space together. I think that's powerful. Other questions or comments from folks? What's resonating? Is there anything that stuck out to you as like, nope, that didn't sound right, or that sounds off, or that wouldn't work here, or we would need to think about that differently in terms of the Raleigh community? One piece that I heard earlier was Ani mentioning the eastern region of Wake County and transportation. I think that is something that is a unique challenge, is how to get folks, a shared space is interesting to think about when folks are more spread apart, and how do we connect families to that space if it does exist physically.
Yeah, there's one thing, this is Cliff, there's one thing that I probably need to have in my notes is what is the subscription fee right now for the Durham system, and a little bit about how that fee was maybe established.
Yeah, sure. You can go online right now and see our pricing structure. It varies widely based on how much space you need, how big your organization is, and what levels of access you want to the services that we offer. And so we try to make it as sliding scale as possible because we recognize that we're serving organizations of budgets of varying sizes. And I think one of the neat things about our model is that really, you pay for what you can afford. And it allows the freedom of easy entry, no matter what. I mean, you can be an organization that, is really just starting out with only a few dollars in the bank, and arguably, starting out at a membership rate of less than, about $50 a month gets you access to the virtual membership in our community. And then getting physical access is closer to about $150 per person per month. And I think that includes things like printing allotment, conference room usage, et cetera, unlimited coffee, Wi-Fi. So when you start doing the math on these operational expenses and how they add up monthly, you're making money by doing this. And that's not even factoring in the collaborative relational network that you're a part of. If you just do the numbers on arguably what you're spending on printing costs and coffee meetings alone, we're already saving you money. If you're a one-person organization or are not yet kind of fully funded, and then you get to kind of grow with us. So as you need to hire more staff and get a bigger office at ReCity, you're only spending money on what you have to for now, and as you grow, you can expand as needed or retract and go in whatever direction you need to go.
Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you.
And I would add, just thinking about the current crisis, and as Rob mentioned, shifting from in-person to virtual, I think Rob has had to think hard about how to support organizations through this time, recognizing they're not getting that full benefit of space. So Rob, I don't know if you want to share how you
it's been quite an adjustment. Yeah. Most people joined because of the physical space, right? I mean, they may have joined for more than that, but they definitely were banking on being able to use office space in our building, and many cannot do that or are electing to work from home. So yeah, we took some pretty drastic moves over the last few weeks where we cut our membership rates across the board by 50%. Proactively. We didn't wait for our partners to come to us. We went to them and said, we know that you're hurting. And so we're going to reduce what you pay us by 50% across the board, unless you choose to waive that as a way to invest in you, our partners, and really absorb the hit that you're taking a little bit right now. But yeah, we're thinking through what does it look like to really, we kind of always underemphasized our virtual membership because it felt like we were shooting ourselves in the foot to let people know you could just use digital, because we had invested so much in physical space and we knew there was so much value there. We didn't want to deter people by like offering, hey, this is way cheaper if you just connect over Zoom. But now that Zoom is all that there is, we're really trying to rev up efforts to say, well, what does it look like to create a virtual membership? Because we don't know when COVID is going to end. How do we give people access to all the connecting in ways that they can still get virtually proximate to each other in our virtual space? There's still value there. And so how do we create that value? And as organizations start to take a hit financially and start thinking, man, we got some overhead here. We're paying way too much for our office space. And maybe they wouldn't have considered sharing space before, but if it's between that and firing some staff or reducing their programming budget, yeah, we'll take that, $2,500 office suite that really is more than what we need, and we'll scale down to $500 for co-working memberships, or start with $200 worth of virtual membership for this space, and then we'll be able to reduce our cost by 80% once we de-quarantine. So I think it's kind of TBD what the future holds for our space, but I do know that having flexible price points right now is going to be is going to be needed in a social impact space where money is really funneling only to relief efforts right now, and those doing the long development work are struggling when to know when it's appropriate to ask for money, and that might not change for a while.
Yeah, I really appreciate hearing that, especially given the current crisis, and we keep hearing we're all in this together. And folks have been pushing back on that a lot, saying, are we all really in this together? We keep saying that, but do we mean it? And so I think that's one way that you're really putting your money where your mouth is, to say, we hear you, and we have some flexibility because we have some outside funds that we can shift and adapt to support the network so that it sustains beyond this time. So I think that's powerful. Other comments, questions at this point? Any other local stories of what's working, or how you've adapted to the current crisis? And if not, that's okay too. Dynasty or Amanda, do you have anything to add, or any questions? Or Ani?
I'm good. I just want to say thank you, Kristen and Rob, for creating this platform for everyone to come together. I know everyone is having different experiences. I do feel like this is that time where we can all share what is working and what's not working, because like many of you all have already said, we do not know how long this situation will last. And so we can be more collaborative during this time. Please reach out to SCV and see how, and
Great. Looks like there is some on an iPhone.
This is Cliff.
Oh, go ahead, Cliff, and then I'm going to unmute someone else on the phone.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we put an agenda item on the SCV agenda to look, either establish a group or one or two people to take a look at how we would take advantage of this new ideal.
Great. We will make
in the future.
Awesome. And I have unmuted the person on the iPhone with their hand
Okay,
raised.
this is Sheila. So I was able to go ahead and come back in. My first thoughts are, I still realize that we're very isolated out here in Eastern Wake County as how to collaborate with Southeast Raleigh and also Raleigh and into Durham. So I really find my greatest connection comes through the Eastern Regional Center with Daryl Blevins. So I do recommend anybody that would like to be able to advocate for their services, also to reach out to the advocacy committee. I know there, when we were meeting in person, there was preparation of how can we better reach the triad cities in Eastern Wake, Wendell, Knightdale, and Zebulon. So with that being said, I don't want everybody just to feel like they're being left out. I feel like we just need to touch base with each other and get to know each other. Again, it's about building those relationships. Also, my second point that I wanted to bring up is that we did have a small coffee shop that was offering collaboration space to come in for individuals that did not have storefront businesses, that were nonprofits and for-profit, really. And I believe that business was in the building for 2 months and just did not get the support that it needed. So a lot of these ideas are very good to come out to the Knightdale area, Wendell area, Zebulon area. We just need to build those relationships so that we can connect.
Yeah, thank you, Sheila. That's absolutely right. And I think the Eastern Regional Center does have an awesome group. And I know that during the crisis, the email list that I'm on has been really helpful in getting information out for the Eastern area. So that I think needs to continue. And I like your idea of doing a face-to-face Zoom connection. So maybe we can work with Daryl to organize one of those in Berkeley.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. I've just put up some poll results on the screen. For those on the phone, I was asking the question, if we were to host other virtual conversations in the future, what are some of the topics you'd like to explore? Looks like there's some interest in continuing this conversation about collaboration and co-working, a fair amount of interest in leading through crisis, self-care, not as much fundraising as I would have expected, though I'm sure there would be interest among others, marketing and communication, volunteer management, and business planning. So I wanted to just pull up our raffle. But while I'm doing that, I did want to thank you all again for joining the conversation today. It sounds like there is going to be a continuation of the conversation in some form, and hopefully we'll do some other Zoom connecting as well. We can add you to our newsletter if you're not already. Again, the Facebook page, you can find info there. But as we had said in our invitation, the first 15 people to register have been added to our raffle. And I've put those last names up on the screen, and I can read them aloud for the people on the phone. And if you're not in the raffle and you don't want to stay for the results, I understand, you can sign off. But those names are Alshami, Bates, Brookins, B. Burnett, Cooper, Faulkner, Ford, Hull, Jolly, Kays, Lavenhouse, Luria, Owen, Wiskerson, Prosser, and Williams. And I'm trying out this cool new tool called the random picker. So I've put everyone's name in the list, and now I can proceed. Just a moment. And while it's loading, I will say what we are doing is we are going to be buying some sweet treats from 5 local businesses in Wake County. These are businesses that are small, minority owned, and creating some awesome sweets. If you go to their website, they have some delicious things they're cooking up right now. So we'll coordinate with winners to make sure that we do a safe either drop off or pickup. But it may take a little bit to get you your sweet treat items. Okay, and if I had a drum roll, it is picking. We'll see if the technology works for us.
Christian, you find the coolest tools. I love this.
You know, trying to show people that they can do things virtually. I thought about drawing names out of a hat, but then I was like, I bet there's an online tool for this. So
I love it.
All right, our winners are Kays, Hull, Lavenhouse, Prosser, and Bates. So we will follow up with each of you to coordinate getting your sweet treats out. But again, thank you to everyone. We will be in touch, and we'll make the recording available if you want to share this with anyone. And thank you so much again to Rob for joining us today for this conversation.
Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Awesome. I hope everyone stays safe, healthy, and that we get to see you in person soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Good to see you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.